Welcome to another episode of People Pod. I want you to picture something with me for a second. Picture a 6-year-old girl sitting on a Greyhound bus. You probably know, like the vibe of a long-haul bus ride.
Oh, yeah. The rumble of the engine, that heavy diesel smell.
Exactly. Now imagine that ride lasting 36 hours. She and her mom are crossing the border from Mexico, heading all the way to Miami. And at some point during this just grueling trip, her mother leans over and tells her they're going to Walt Disney World.
Which is a gentle lie.
Right. It's a sweet, desperate piece of fiction just meant to comfort a really tired kid.
Yeah.
But the reality of what that bus ride was actually leading to is so much heavier and honestly so much more fascinating. It's an immigrant journey that would eventually lead to global pop superstardom, billions of streams, and some truly intense international controversies.
It really is an incredible trajectory, because today's deep dive is into the life and career of Camila Cabello. Now, you probably know her for these massive, inescapable chart-topping hits.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Songs like Havana and Senorita that quite literally defined the sound of global pop for several years. But if we actually look closely at her story, past the shiny music videos and the radio play, it is a deeply human profile. It's a story of cultural synthesis, of constant agonizing reinvention, and of holding fiercely onto your roots while trying to survive in a highly manufactured industry.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission today is to explore exactly how a young Cuban-Mexican immigrant navigated that heavy machinery of manufactured pop stardom, and how she eventually had to tear a lot of it down to find her own raw and sometimes very polarizing voice.
To understand the artist she becomes, you really have to start with the geography of her childhood, because it dictates everything. She was born Carla Camila Cabello Estrabo in 1997 in Cojimar, which is a district of Havana, Cuba.
Oh.
Her mother is Cuban, and her father was born in Mexico City. So her early years were spent literally moving back and forth between Mexico and Cuba. She is always deeply vocally identified as Cuban-Mexican. It's the absolute foundation of her identity.
And there is this incredible historical weight in her family tree, too. Like, here's where it gets really interesting. Her great-great-grandfather, a man named Procula Capistran, was actually a guerrilla fighter.
Wow.
Yeah, he fought alongside Emiliano Zapata in the Mexican Revolution. There are even surviving photos of him seated right next to Zapata around 1911. Think about that for a second. That fierce, anti-establishment revolutionary grit, it's quite literally in her blood.
It is, and you see that exact same grit in her parents when they made the decision to uproot their lives and move to the United States. When Camila was around 6 or 7, they hit a massive roadblock.
The visa issue, right.
Exactly. Her father couldn't get his visa approved and was delayed for about 18 months. So it was just Camila and her mother making that grueling 36-hour Greyhound bus trip to Miami alone.
Which had to be terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. And once they arrived, the reality was incredibly harsh. Back in Cuba, her mother was a fully trained, degree-holding architect. But in Miami, none of those credentials transferred. She started out working at Marshall's, just stacking shoes in the aisles.
Which is such a classic, heartbreaking immigrant story, isn't it? Leaving behind your hard-earned credentials, your entire professional identity, to start at the absolute bottom, just to give your kid a shot.
Yeah, it really is.
But then while she's working at Marshall's, she happens to meet 2 other Cuban women who mention that their brother is looking to hire someone who knows AutoCAD.
Right. And for context, AutoCAD is not just some simple app you download and figure out in an afternoon. It is highly complex, industry-standard architectural design software.
Right. It takes months to learn.
Exactly. It requires a deep understanding of spatial geometry, layering, and digital drafting.
And her mother didn't know the program at all, but she recognized a lifeline. So she essentially locked herself away and taught herself AutoCAD in a single week just to secure that job.
That's just wild.
I know. And it worked. She got the job. And eventually, she and her husband formed their own entire construction company in Miami, naming it after their 2 daughters, Camila and Sofia.
That is the environment Camila grew up in. An environment where survival absolutely depends on rapid adaptation. You do what you have to do, you learn what you have to learn, and you do it faster than anyone else expects you to.
You know, I hadn't thought about it like this before, but that is the exact blueprint Camila used for her own career. I think about her mother's survival-driven reinvention, learning complex software in a week, and it mirrors Camila's entry into music perfectly.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, because she had to rapidly learn the brutal, unforgiving mechanics of the music industry, the intense vocal training, the media coaching, the exhausting choreography. She absorbed all of that at breakneck speed. Because just like her mom, Her survival in that completely foreign world depended on it.
Oh, absolutely. That relentless drive trickled down directly. By the time she was in the ninth grade, she made the decision to leave traditional schooling.
To just focus on music.
Yeah, during the 2012 to 2013 academic year, she opted for homeschooling, specifically to chase what was, frankly, a wildly improbable dream of being a singer.
Right. Which brings us to her actual entry into the music business. She travels up to Greensboro, North Carolina to audition for the reality TV talent show The X Factor.
And sings Aretha Franklin.
Yes, respect. But the craziest part of this origin story, that audition never even aired on television. The producers couldn't secure the copyright clearance for the song.
Which is actually a massive disadvantage in the reality TV ecosystem.
Oh, so?
Well, usually a contestant builds their initial fan base because the audience sees their first audition, learns their backstory, and gets emotionally invested from day one. Cabello was completely robbed of that narrative arc. She was basically invisible to the television audience at the start.
Wow. And it almost ended right there in the shadows, too.
It did. During the boot camp portion of the show down in Miami, she was actually eliminated. She was cut.
But then Simon Cowell steps in.
Yes. Cowell, who was producing and judging, pulled her back to the stage along with 4 other contestants. Allie Brooke, Normani, Lauren Jaregui, and Dinah Jane.
And that's Fifth Harmony.
Exactly. They formed a girl group that ended up finishing in 3rd place on the show.
And Fifth Harmony doesn't just do well. I mean, they become an absolute juggernaut. They sign a joint record deal. They release huge culture-dominating hits like Worth It and Work From Home.
They were everywhere.
Literally everywhere on the international charts. But almost immediately, you can sense this underlying tension in the collective.
Yeah, if we look at the mechanics of pop music history, girl groups and boy bands are notoriously difficult to balance. They are corporate products built on archetypes. Everyone is assigned a role.
Right, the sporty one, the edgy one.
Exactly. But as one music journalist noted at the time, it is rather uncommon for someone to stand out in a collective quite as much as Cabello did. Her tone was different, her stage presence was different.
And she was clearly looking outward.
Definitely. You could see her artistic ambitions stretching way beyond the confines of the group. In late 2015, she does this solo duet with Shawn Mendes called I Know What You Did Last Summer, which they wrote backstage on tour.
Oh, I didn't realize they wrote it on tour.
Yeah, and then in 2016, she teams up with Machine Gun Kelly for Bad Things, which shot up to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100.
So she's actively tasting solo success while still locked into the group's grueling schedule. And then, December 2016 marks the ultimate turning point. She leaves Fifth Harmony.
And it is messy.
So messy. We're talking highly contradictory explanations from both sides. Press releases refuting other press releases, fans aggressively taking sides across social media.
It was a massive rupture. Walking away from a money-making machine like that is a huge, calculated gamble. The industry graveyard is full of people who left successful groups and just vanished.
Which is why I really want to push back on the glamorized idea of reality TV bands for a second. Like, imagine being a teenager, having your entire musical and public identity dictated by a corporate machine.
It sounds exhausting.
Right. You were told what to wear, what lyrics to sing, how to pose, and then to realize that doesn't fit you, you have to publicly and messily tear down the very thing that made you famous, just to figure out who you actually are. That requires an immense amount of nerve.
It does. It requires real psychological resilience. And what she figures out pretty quickly when she's on her own is that her cultural identity, the very thing that makes her different, is her superpower.
Oh, totally.
In 2018, she releases her debut solo album, simply titled Camila. And it wasn't just generic focus group pop, it was heavily unapologetically influenced by Latin music.
And that gave us Havana.
Yes, featuring Young Thug, it becomes an absolute global phenomenon, reached #1 almost everywhere. By June 2018, it became Spotify's most streamed song ever by a solo female artist.
Wait, I want to emphasize how crazy that is.
Yeah.
She made Billboard history right out of the gate.
She really did. With Havana and her follow-up single, Never Be the Same, she became the first artist ever to top both the mainstream Top 40 and the adult Top 40 airplay charts with the first 2 singles from a debut album.
Okay, for anyone who doesn't track radio analytics, what is the actual difference between those 2 charts?
Yeah.
And why does topping both matter?
Good question. It's all about demographics.
The mainstream Top 40 represents what younger audiences, teenagers, and pop fans are streaming. It's the pulse of youth culture.
Got it.
And the adult Top 40.
That tracks what is playing in offices, grocery stores, and for an older millennial or Gen X demographic. So if you top both simultaneously, it means you have achieved total cultural saturation. You've bridged the generational divide.
That is massive. She even opened the Grammy Awards that year performing Havana, making her the first female Latin artist to ever open the show. So she's at the absolute peak of the mountain.
And she didn't slow down to catch her breath at all. She moved right into her second album, Romance, released in late 2019.
Which had Senorita.
Exactly. This era was defined by massive, sweeping pop tracks. Senorita was her second collaboration with Shawn Mendes, and it eventually topped the charts in over 30 countries.
And that song basically became the inescapable soundtrack to her very public relationship with Mendes, which began in the summer of 2019. Which honestly brings us to the deeply complicated psychological nature of modern celebrity.
What's fascinating here is how the public consumed that relationship. Because they released a steamy duet right around the exact same time they started dating, there were immediate, widespread rumors that the entire relationship was just a manufactured PR stunt.
Right. And Mendes actually had to come out publicly and insist to the press that it was definitely not a publicity stunt.
Just imagine the toll that takes.
Seriously, you are in your early 20s trying to navigate love, and you are living under this incredibly intense microscope where millions of people are analyzing your paparazzi photos. Trying to decode your body language to prove your romance is just a marketing strategy.
They eventually broke up in November 2021, but it really highlights the absolute fishbowl she was living in during the romance era. It's a level of scrutiny most of us couldn't even imagine.
No kidding.
But despite all that, her career kept expanding. She starred as the title character in a 2021 Amazon Prime adaptation of Cinderella, which became the most-watched movie musical of that year.
But creatively, internally, she was evolving, right?
Yes. Her subsequent eras would start to peel back that highly polished, heavily curated pop veneer we saw in the romance era. She starts to reveal something much more raw, slightly chaotic, and eventually much more politically charged.
Which brings us to 2022 and her third album, Familia. Now, you can really hear the psychological pressure cooker exploding here. Critics love this album.
They did. Rolling Stone called it an imperfect yet revealing mosaic of her heritage.
And The Guardian praised its vibrant Latin motifs, specifically noting that it dealt heavily with dark themes of paranoia and self-sabotage.
Yeah, the album gave us the huge hit Bam Bam featuring Ed Sheeran. But this specific era also marked a moment where her unfiltered personality started actively clashing with traditional pop star expectations.
Oh, are we talking about the soccer game?
We are. In May 2022, she was booked as the headliner for the UEFA Champions League final opening ceremony in Paris.
Oh, man. The infamous soccer incident.
Exactly. For those who aren't familiar with European football culture, it is highly tribal. During her performance on the pitch, the stadium fans were incredibly loud, singing their own team anthems right over her music.
It was chaotic.
Very. And afterward, she took to Twitter, now X, and openly called the fans very rude for doing that. It created an immediate controversy and a really fascinating culture clash.
Because Americans expect something totally different.
Right. You have the expectations of a highly choreographed American-style pop performance colliding with the raw, aggressive nature of European football fandom, where the fans believe they are the show.
She was just speaking her mind, but it definitely ruffled a lot of feathers. And you can see how that willingness to embrace a little friction really set the stage for her 2024 pivot.
Her hyperpop era.
Yes. She entered what critics called her hyperpop era with her fourth studio album, XOXO.
And that was a drastic departure sonically. For anyone unfamiliar, hyperpop is a microgenre that basically takes standard pop music and artificially cranks it up to a chaotic, glitchy, almost abrasive extreme.
Lots of auto-tune.
Heavy auto-tune, metallic beats, subverting expectations. She completely shifted her sound and aesthetic, dropping this incredibly eccentric single called I Love It, featuring Playboy Carti. It was the absolute antithesis of the polished Senorita days.
But while her music was getting more experimental and abstract, her public voice regarding geopolitical issues was becoming incredibly direct, grounded, and unvarnished.
Absolutely.
She has a long history of philanthropy, raising money for Save the Children, the Movement Voter Fund, climate advocacy, but her most passionate personal advocacy has always been directed right back at her native Cuba.
This is a critical part of her story. In July 2021, during the widespread protests in Cuba over severe economic hardships and COVID-19 shortages, she used her massive global platform to boost the SOS Cuba movement.
Raising awareness about the lack of basic medical resources.
Yes. But it was in early 2026 that things got intensely political and deeply personal.
Yeah, let's look at exactly what happened in February 2026. Amid widespread reports of massive blackouts, severe food scarcity, and an economy on the brink of total collapse, Cabello published a very lengthy, deeply emotional statement.
She did. She described Cuba as enduring 67 years of a failing dictatorship and an oppressive regime. She detailed horrific conditions on the ground.
Stating that people were starving, looking for food in trash heaps.
Exactly. That hospitals lacked basic medicine, and that peaceful protesters, including children as young as 13, were at risk of imprisonment.
And it wasn't just a political talking point for her. She talked about how she maintains constant contact with her family still living there. She talked about the logistics of sending them medicine and clothes, and how the desperation is driving people to risk their lives on makeshift rafts.
They used the post to urge her millions of followers to donate to Caritas Cuba for humanitarian relief. Now, we want to be really clear with you here. We are not taking a geopolitical side or endorsing specific viewpoints.
Right, we're just unpacking the events.
Exactly. We are exploring how a pop star's deeply personal pain intersects with incredibly complex global politics, because the reaction to her 2026 statement was intensely polarized, and it shows exactly what happens when an artist steps outside the safe boundaries of pop music.
It raises a fascinating question like, what are the actual limits of pop star advocacy? When a singer points to a crisis, how much nuance does the public actually allow them to have?
The media and public response perfectly illustrates that tension. On one hand, a huge portion of people highly praised her bravery. They celebrated her for utilizing a massive platform to amplify a severe humanitarian crisis.
Seeing it as a powerful woman advocating for her family's reality.
Exactly. But on the other hand, the pushback was fierce and immediate.
It really was. Critics strongly accused her statement of downplaying the role of long-standing United States sanctions and the U.S. embargo.
Right, arguing that those external factors heavily exacerbate the economic difficulties in Cuba. They criticized her for aligning her messaging with what they viewed as anti-government exile politics, rather than acknowledging a broader geopolitical context.
And throughout all of this backlash, Cabello has consistently maintained her stance, attributing the primary responsibility for the island's hardships to decades of authoritarian rule.
But the whole episode proves that entering the geopolitical arena instantly removes the safety net of universal pop appeal. You can't please everyone once you start talking about real-world suffering.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the whole picture, from the charts to the controversies, I want to bring us back to that 6-year-old girl on the Greyhound bus.
The Disney World lie.
Exactly. Her mother promised her a fantasy. She told her they were going to this prepackaged, perfect, magical kingdom where nothing goes wrong. But Camila didn't get that. Instead, she had to navigate the incredibly grueling, often brutal machinery of the music industry.
She really went through it all. Reality TV eliminations, being a cog in a corporate girl group, hyper-analyzed breakups.
Yeah, she had to build her own reality. Her legacy isn't just about catchy hooks or breaking Spotify records. It's a testament to the power of cultural synthesis and fighting tooth and nail to find and fiercely protect your authentic voice.
Especially when that voice starts making people uncomfortable. That is the ultimate takeaway here. The journey from a manufactured pop idol to an autonomous, outspoken artist is never a clean, easy line. It is messy, it involves a lot of friction, but it is deeply compelling to watch.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As the music industry becomes increasingly decentralized by things like TikTok, independent streaming, and now AI, we might actually be witnessing the absolute last generation of the manufactured pop star.
That's a wild thought.
Right. If the massive corporate machinery that built and ultimately restricted Camila Cabello ceases to exist in the same way, will the artists of tomorrow even have a machine to rebel against? Or will they have to find an entirely new, perhaps even harder way to prove their authenticity to us? Thanks for listening to PPL Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.